It's now time for the Eld Henderson Real News Show, Organize, Don't Criticize, which airs each Wednesday evening from 6 o'clock p.m. until 7 o'clock p.m. here on WMPR. We now take you to Studio B for the Eld Henderson Real News Show, Organize, Don't Criticize with Dr. Henderson.
Hello, everyone. I want to say good afternoon. Good afternoon. This is Eldridge Henderson from Bolton, Mississippi, of course, and we're live in Jackson, Mississippi. I want to tell you, folks, we are pleased to be with you. This is our second new series on Organize, Don't Criticize. And as you know, that is nothing new. We have talked about this many times, Organize, Don't Criticize, because that's the historical book that we have. We have this book. It's called Organize, Don't Criticize, and we want you all to purchase a copy. It'll tell you how to organize yourselves from the family basis to your community. And I guarantee you it's going to fit in exactly what we are talking about this afternoon. Tonight we'll be talking about the blacks in politics, past, present, and future. And then we're going to share some things with you and show you that there are certain things you must do through 2030 if you want to get ahead and become a real citizen in America. I've talked to you about this for at least 30 years, off and on, here and there, all over the country and other places. And right now, I want you to understand we are all over the world, all over the states. We are on going to have millions in the future. And that's why we're telling you, get this book, because everybody's not going to be able to hear this show and not going to see it, even though they have so many computers and phones and everything all over the world. Most people have them, but most people don't have time to listen to this stuff. And that's why we put the book together called Organize, Don't Criticize, so you can get you one from Amazon. They're giving these books away for $9.99 per paperback. And all this book is about is telling you how to put your resources together. Put those resources together. Your savings, your talents. Organize your own leaders, and you will become a real person. You will become a new man. And we have a step-by-step process that you can do in your home, in your city, in your state, and change things in 30, 60, 90 days, unless you just like being static where you are. So that's what we are looking at today. I have an old quote, too, from some old folks that I used to hear and talk to in the community. And they said something like, sometimes you get, and sometimes you get got. I think some of y'all have heard that before. And that's an old saying, and it's going to fall right into what we are talking about today. Sometimes you get, and sometimes you get got. Now, that's old English, old English. And when I talk about blacks in politics, the past, present, and future, you're going to see, ladies and gentlemen, and many of you are going to see for the first time, that you don't have nothing to brag about. Nothing. You think you're doing well as a black community in politics. Some of you think you've done well in the past. Some of you all been thinking right now, I know you, I talk to you, think you're doing well politically in the future, and especially the present. Oh, we have new mayors, we have new senators, we have new people in the supervisor positions, all over the thing. But I'm going to tell you, folks, you've been misled if you think you're doing well in politics as a black entity in America, and even doing worse in the world politically. Now, let's look at some facts. Now, they have a group here. They have some representatives here in Mississippi. They're associated with what we call the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies. These folks opened their doors in the 1970s And at that time, in the 1970s, there were about 1,400 elected black officials across the United States. About 1,400. Matter of fact, the real number is 1,469 black elected officials in office across the United States. And today, you wouldn't believe it. Some of you that are politically conscious will believe that today we have over 10,000 black leaders serving in almost every level of government, from the city council to state houses, and including the United States Congress. Over 10,000 versus just 1,400 a few years ago. And the bad news is that African Americans still fall short in terms of all economic and political representation. In America today, starting on a local level, black folks don't have any overall economic well-being and political representation. And I'm going to tell you why. And since I always like to talk about the past, the present, and the future, I am going to tell you this evening what you must do in order to change this. And if you don't want to do it, you're going to stay gut. That's where you're going to be. You ain't going to get nothing in the future. And we have some operatives in this state, in Mississippi, in the South, and in the nation, and worldwide, they're saying we are going to make sure that we keep everything we have, and I'm talking about the people that are currently in office, for ourselves, and do everything we can to get other people out. And the few that's in that we don't like, we're going to kick them out one way or the other. We're going to charge them or just outright take their positions of responsibility. So I want you to see, folks, that if you don't have things in your order that you order yourself, you can expect a decline in your household, in your cities and states, and in your nation. You must do something for yourself. You've heard me say it. You must have new leaders and use that old process of recruiting, selecting, training, and placing these new leaders in positions of responsibility in 5 areas. I'm going to get into that tonight. That's what we're going to talk about for the next few times. And we are talking about this economic, political, and social integration for black folks. And I'm not talking about that other integration. We want black people to put their economics and their politics and their social aspirations together, using their own leaders and their own resources and their own funds. And I guarantee you, other people will start knocking at your door to get what you got. And look at the so-called bad news for some, good news for others. And it says here, according to this study that I mentioned earlier with the Joint Center for Economic and Political Studies, they said some time ago, you find that we are regressing in America. Regressing means we're getting worse politically and economically. A lot of you don't believe it. And that's why you've been brainwashed. You don't believe that you're worse off today than you were in the 1960s. Now, most of you all didn't own a fine house in the 1960s. You didn't own a nice car, most of you. You didn't have credit cards. You didn't have kids in college. Those of you now that have those things that I just mentioned don't own as much as you owned economically in the 1960s. You don't own the car. You know you don't. You heard me say a few weeks ago, you don't own the house. You're paying a big mortgage on that. And the utilities costed more than the house note you had when you were back there in the 1960s. Utilities, $700-800 a month. Your phone bill is $500 and $600 a month. So you are worse off when you had 1,400 people versus over 10,000 today that's supposed to be looking out for your political interests. And you know who those people are? They're your cousins, your brothers and sisters, your ministers, your elected and appointed friends and relatives and organization members. You know who these people are, I guarantee you. They're not doing anything for you, nothing at all. And that's why when you had 11% of the black folks in high-ranking positions, they were commissioned officers within the White House, 11% some years ago, 11% with about 14% of the population. That was real good, a lot of people thought. Democrats and Republicans gave blacks position in the White House. But our current president only has one so-called black member in his cabinet and another one that is black, but not passing for black. So we are worse off than we were in the 1970s and 80s, politically and economically. I'm going to beat you to death with these facts, ladies and gentlemen, because before we end this show, we're going to show you that there's something you can do, or you're going to have to just learn to shut up and take this whipping. And when you get whipped long enough, some of you are going to start squalling and you'll start doing something. But I would advise you, don't feel that you need to get a whipping before you start thinking you're going to get better. Now, let me tell you something that all of you know. And I want to tell you this. It's going to be embarrassing for some of you. A lot of you all think at the state levels throughout the United States that the black political leadership is doing something great. And I'm telling you right now, the political situation now for black folks in America is nothing to pray about. Prayer ain't going to help you now. I'm telling you, prayer is not going to help you because I want you to listen at the facts. Today, out of 50 states, we only have one black governor in Maryland. His name is Wes Moore. Wes Moore in Maryland. He's one of the third black governors we ever had in America. 3 since 1868. Only 3 black governors. And right now, and some of you all are saying we're doing so well because we have 5 black senators serving in the U.S. Senate. That's about nothing, folks. 5 out of 100. And you have 14% of the population. We have Senator Alsobrook, Senator Blunt Rochester, Raph Warnock, Cory Booker, and Tim Scott. And 3 of these out of this 5 don't even represent black folks. I'm not going to tell you the names. I'm not going to feed you everything. I want you to do some research yourself. These folks, 3 of them represent white folks and other so-called minorities in America. Then you have another group, a lot of you all hollering and squalling and saying, oh, the Lord and bless us. You have something called the Congressional Black Caucus in America. So I'm calling it the CBC. And they have made some historic milestones according to some. Now they have 62 members. That is the highest membership they ever had. Have any of you all ever heard any legislation that was strongly endorsed and passed by the Congressional Black Caucus? The Congressional Black Caucus has strong membership on paper, but very little ability to change things for black people throughout the United States. And now they have another opportunity with 62 members. And I guarantee you, you're not going to see anything of what we call historical worth from the Black Caucus. And it's the same problem with the Black Caucus as others. You don't have enough people voting to put people in office that could make a difference. And at the same time, you are finding that most of you all are putting the same people back in office on the local level, state level, and the national level, over and over. You got to start thinking of another way, folks. So if you think the black leadership is flourishing in America, you better stop praying and saying, Lord, to bless us. I'm telling you right now, it's not going to happen. Those prayers are not going to do you any good. You're going to have to do some of the other things you're going to hear in a few minutes, folks, to make sure that you are moving in the right direction. I want you to think about that. I want you to forget about what the so-called 143 black mayors are doing throughout the country. If you look at some of the major cities in America, like New York City, Los Angeles, Chicago, Houston, Philadelphia, and Atlanta, they all have black mayors. And they are all of one political persuasion. And all of them have the same problem. in areas where the white mayors are. Black folks are still suffering economically, politically, and socially because they are not organized. They have been criticizing and praying too much over what other people are doing instead of organizing themselves. So I want you to think about it, ladies and gentlemen, because I'm not going to be easy on you just because you're suffering. I'm going to say we're going to suffer together, and I'm going to give you the facts and hope I can whip enough of you in order to get you to start registering and vote. Only about 25% of you vote on the local, state, and national level, unless there's a presidential election. And if there is a presidential election, maybe 35% of you vote, and the rest of you are always criticizing others, talking about what they are doing against me. They're supposed to do that. That's what folks do, because you just like to criticize and talk about that I've been messed over. I've been taken advantage of. It. They don't love me. Of course they don't love you. Why should somebody love you when they believe by looking at your actions that you don't love yourself? And you are saying, well, he's not talking Christian now. We Americans, we love each other. You know that's a lie. You don't love yourself. So why would the Americans love you? Most Americans don't love themselves other than individually. And that's when they got something and trying to keep it from you and others. That's the only time they love themselves. People in this country and in this world don't love each other. They like to fight each other and take things from their peers, their friends, their relatives. That's in their laws on the state and local and federal levels. They passed constitutions. Currently, they have all kind of policies and guidelines that are discriminatory against all kind of folks. So I want you to now look at the future, folks, and I'm going to tell you again through our research and our conversations with people that you got to stop thinking now about the past. Since you know the past, you got to stop thinking about it. And you have to start looking at the old Hendersonistic approach that I've been talking to you all about for a long time. A lot of you good Americans here in Mississippi, in the South, and in the nation, emailing us and sending us Facebook clips and all kind of crazy stuff, criticizing us. And they just make me go stronger. I just love criticism when it comes to hearing the facts that I give, and then you criticize, knowing that you're feeling guilty, and that's why you want to whip me and say, you don't seem to have enough Christianity, Eldridge Henderson. Say, you don't seem to be praying enough. Say, if you pray more, the world will be better. I'm going to tell you right now, folks, that won't make the world better. Not for Americans, not for anywhere in Europe, not for anywhere in Africa and Asia. You got to pray and then work, folks. That's what you have to do. Otherwise, even the Bible told you, and I get tired of telling you this, it tells you if you don't work, you're going to starve to death. And look what happened to a lot of you just a few weeks ago. Many of you all had government jobs. And I know people that were making $250,000 a year. Husband and wives, sons and daughters, and many of people. And time they lost their job, they couldn't eat the next month. They had to go and borrow money to get another job. And that's why we've been telling you on the Old Henderson Real News Show for years, you need to organize, you need to set up a budget, you need to have one of those emergency funds where you add up all your bills. I told you this many times throughout the years, added up all your monthly bills for about 6 months or a year. And when something happened to you, you won't have to be begging. You can take positive action and get things moving in your direction in a short period of time. You don't have to go to work elsewhere if you have your money saved like you're supposed to. You can fight the government. You can fight your church leaders. You can fight those individual politicians that you don't like when they are doing things to cause you problems. If you organize, if you have some resources. So I just want to tell you now one more time, and this is a system that is proven, ladies and gentlemen, to change your life in 30, 60, or 90 days. And I'm going to tell you simply how to achieve political power in Mississippi, in the South, and the nation by 2030. Think about it. That's just a few years from now. 5 years. 5 years. Going to tell you. And you're not going to hear this anywhere else because the other people have their head in the sand. They're not going to tell you these things you're going to hear on this show. And that's why in the future, ladies and gentlemen, starting next week, we want more of you all to call us and say, I want you to come to our schools, churches, family reunions, and our other so-called conferences and give us some information on what we need to do to be saved while we're alive. And politically and economically, this is what you're going to have to do, folks. Here's something that people don't like to hear. The first thing blacks going to have to do to achieve political power in Mississippi, in the South, and the nation by 2030, you must have some black leadership strategies that focus on 7 things that I'm going to address today. I'm just going to give you 7 today. We have researched 50 that we have in our coffers, and we have paraphrased this to fit your sound knowledge. And your sound knowledge is something that you hear that you can understand. We are not going to give you a lot of big words that you have to go to a dictionary for, because you know you don't use that dictionary and that Bible that you have on the same little shelf. You haven't seen either one of them in 5 and 10 years, other than looking at it, and every now and then, once a year, you might dust it off a little bit, but you know you don't read it. So you just listen to this, and I tell you many times, if you hear this show, you ought to just record it. You can't remember all these good things we say, because when you have good news, folks don't want to hear it. Because whenever you hear good news, you're going to hear some bad news about you. Because all the good news is usually talking about something that's going to change your life in 30, 60, 90 days. Most of you are not doing it, so you're not going to hear that part. But if you want some political power in the great state of Mississippi, in the South, and the nation, by 2030, folks, the black leadership strategies must focus on 7 things. I say black leadership strategies must focus on 7 things. And some of you all are saying, here he is again, talking about what black folks must do. So we have more than black people in America. Of course you do. That's why you're in such a bad situation now, folks. You've been dependent on others to do something for you, and they're not going to do that. And even when they attempt to do something for you, whether take over your economics, your political situation, help you with your social environment, they're doing that for their own gain. You watch. When these outsiders come in here and help you do things, they're going to get a big grant to pay their way. They're going to make $40,000, $50,000, $75,000 a year for salaries. They're going to pay you to do the teaching and the hard work. Where they make an equivalent of $75 an hour, they're going to pay you about $10. And you're going to do most of the work. And they're going to stay in the office. They call those good old administrative jobs. So, folks, if you want to start getting yourselves together, here's the first thing you're going to have to do. This is going to hurt a lot of your hearts. It's going to hurt you. Some of you are going to have to go to the refrigerator and pull out some wine or something, or Coca-Cola, and say, that man has lost his mind. Every one of you that's listening, ladies and gentlemen, that pretend you're in a position of leadership, you need to go out right now, and I've been telling you this for years, and recruit you a new young black leader and put him or her in your organization and teach them leadership position. Teach it. And if you have one yourself, you need to have them right beside you, learning how to strategize, how to become a positive leader, how to make decisions. And these young people ought to be between ages 16 to 35. We call it creating this new man, recruiting new young black leaders and put them in all of your organizations. Here's something else. The second thing you need to consider, folks, and you're not going to do this, you used to do that years ago, but you're not going to do it anymore because most of you all believe so strongly that if you get integrated with everybody else in America, you'll be going to heaven when you die. Folks, you got to build political clubs in your schools and community service organizations, in those places where you can. You're going to have to put Democrat, Republican, what we call independent clubs in these high schools, middle schools, colleges, and universities, and get your children in there. Let them do like you used to do. Years ago, you had blacks in the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts. You had black baseball and softball teams that were not associated with the public schools. So you need to build political clubs in these schools, in these churches, and with these community service organizations. You got to teach them leadership somewhere. So you need to do it yourself. If you have a political club on one of the high schools, in one of the high schools, in one of the colleges, your son or daughter is not going to be in it, in a position of leadership. So if you're just a member, that doesn't mean anything. You never have a chance to make any policy. You don't have a chance to go and represent your organization. You're just a member. Being a member of an organization where people controlling the money, all the positions and the services and other goods that they distribute among themselves, and you don't have anything but a crumb, you don't even need to be in. Something else that's going to hurt a lot of you mentally in just a few minutes. I'm going to tell you that before we can do this break. And I know you don't like this, but the third thing that black people are going to have to do in Mississippi, in the South, and in the nation is to go and recruit more black female representatives and put them in politics, economic development, and leadership positions in other areas of responsibility. Religion, leadership, education and training, all of it. Why I say you need to have an increased number of black females in these organizations in leadership positions is very simple. They have better education and training than the males in Mississippi, in the South, and in the nation. Most of them are hard workers. Most of them can multitask. They can raise a family, work 2 or 3 jobs, get involved in community activities, and raise money and do all the cooking and washing for you while you just sit around and pretend you are a leader. So if you want to get something done from someone that's smarter than you, and I know a lot of these males don't want to hear it, you need to increase black female representation in all areas of responsibility: education and training, leadership, religion, economic development, and politics. Listen to me, folks. This is the only place you're going to get the real news and not propaganda. Now, the other thing you must do if you want to be able to be competitive in America and stop begging and stop being the one that got. You know, that's not good English, but I don't care about that. You want to stop being got by others and get something for yourself. So this is what you're going to do. The next one is very important. You're going to have to demand more black representation and leadership position on the local and state boards of control. We call them boards, agencies, and commissions. Anytime in any state where you have 2% of the population, 5, 10, 15, 20, or 30, or 40%, as you know in Mississippi, about 47% of the folks are considered black in Mississippi. And if you have 1 to 2% of the representation on the boards and commissions, you have no power at all. And if you want to know that this is a fact, all you have to do, whatever state you are listening in, and many of you all know that this show is all over the world, and especially the 50 states here in America, you need to look at your population number and look at who is on your state boards and commission. See if you see any of your relatives, anybody like you that you can look at and say, that might be a black person. We know we don't have so much interrelationist going on in America now. A lot of these so-called blacks have changed colors now. They're looking like other folks. And they say they are like other folks now. They say, I ain't black no more. And we know they are Because we can look at them and tell, and we can talk to them and hear that accent, even though they're trying to fool them. But we know black folks and we see them. And you know you do. Because a lot of you all have cousins that have attended college and learned what we call a little so-called better English than you had when you were down in Chula, Mississippi or whatever. They have those so-called BS degrees. They have moved to California and other places. And a lot of them now passing for white. I got a lot of them like that in my relatives. They left here, I've told you many times, in the 50s and 60s, and those devils now have passed for white. When they come and visit, they won't even visit us. We have to go and see them, the few of us that'll do it, in a local hotel in Clinton, Pearl, Rankin County, somewhere like that. A lot of you all like that. They won't even come and visit with their grandparents. Some won't even visit with the parents. You have to go and meet with them. And they just left here in the 1960s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. Oh, we have 1 minute coming up for a break, folks, and I just want you to think about what I told you. 1 minute.
Plan today, protect tomorrow. Life is full of uncertainties, but your family's future doesn't have to be. Having life insurance, a will, and a trust in place is one of the most powerful acts of love and responsibility you can give to your loved ones. Life insurance provides financial security for your family when they need it most. Will ensures your wishes are honored and your assets go where you intend. Trust offers added protection and peace of mind by safeguarding your legacy. Don't wait until it's too late. Start preparing today so your family is protected tomorrow. Need guidance? Contact Dr. Eldridge Henderson at 601-201-11957 to learn more about how to get started. Dr. Henderson is available for speaking engagements. Like and follow us on Facebook and YouTube. Now back to our show.
Okay, folks, you heard the real news. The real news is, if you want to hear the real news, you call Eldridge Henderson at PCAP Media and Actual Leadership Institute. The number we want you to call is 601-201-1957. And say, for the first time, we want to hear somebody give us real facts so we can talk about our needs in education and training, politics, religion, leadership, economic development, and all those other areas that you need to address in order to become a real citizen. You ought to be tired of being a third-class citizen. And if you continue to get the same person or the same little clique that come to your churches, your schools, your community organizations, do your staff development and training, the same thing you've heard over and over and over, your situation is going to get worse in those areas. I'm telling you. And if you look at your leaders, they are in the clique too. So they're going to call the same old preacher, the same old politician, the same old community organization president, and let them talk to you about the same thing over and over. Very seldom will they be talking about the things that's going to help you. They're talking about working with other folks. They say working with other folks. That's what you need to do. Now, if you work with others, you have to be in a position of leadership and tell them what to do. So let's look at this, folks. We know now that you can change by listening to new leadership. If you get these young people that I mentioned, you'll find that they definitely give you something different. And when you build these political clubs that I mentioned in these schools and community organizations, you're going to find things changing for you. When you go and recruit more females, black female representatives, who's some of the smartest people in the history of America, black female, more college education, most of them have more money than black males, more responsibility, can multitask, as I told you. And then when you get more black representation in leadership position on state boards and commissions, a lot of those ought to be young people from 18 to 40 years of age. You don't need to be 50, 60, 70, 80 to be on a state board or a commissioner. You could be a state commissioner at 21 years of age. You could be a sheriff at 21. You could be in the House and the Senate. You could be president of the United States in your early 40s. And all you have to do is be a representative from the area that you're located in and that you are representing the people in. That's all you have to do. Be a citizen. And for some of it, you don't have to be born in America. Just be a naturalized citizen. Get over here in a couple of years, you can be governor, be everything except president. And if you get enough of your friends in office, you can be a person born in Asia, Africa, or Europe, or anywhere. If you get enough votes, they can change the Constitution. And they can become president of the United States. They're born in Africa or anywhere. So that's what I want you to understand, folks, that we want to give you this information because you're not going to hear it anywhere else. And some of you don't like good news. You like bad news. That don't give you enough time to criticize, folks. But let's continue. We're going to look at the future, politically and economically, in the great state of Mississippi, in the South, and the nation. And by 2030, if you do some of those things that we've been talking about, your life will start changing, and people all over the world will be visiting you in Mississippi, in the South, and in this nation, trying to find out how are you doing the things you are doing, because we are tired of suffering, and we are going to do just like we did in the 1980s and 90s. People all over the world would visit America after the so-called civil rights era and find out how they can get themselves involved in politics, especially white females. They were catching so much hell in America, they couldn't vote, couldn't do anything. If they got married, they had to turn their husband over, turn their economic achievement over to the husband, the land, the plantations, the houses. And they couldn't vote themselves because their husbands and fathers and grandfathers say, you white women can't vote until 1924. And you know your black couldn't. And say, we're going to keep you subservient because we care nothing about you. You're just property to us. You're just our mothers, our wives, our daughters, our aunts. And we're going to put you on the same status as the others, but we're one step higher. And we're going to brainwash you and tell you that you are better than everybody else and that you are the one that we love. But you better be quiet and don't say nothing. And in the mid-1920s, those women said, we got to do better than this. They start protesting. But when the blacks tried to do the same thing with them, they said, no, you got to step aside. We don't want you involved. Voting is for white women here in Mississippi, in the South, and in the nation. That's a whole new podcast. We'll get in that eventually. Now, the next things black people are going to have to do in Mississippi, the South, and the nation by 2030, if they want to get leadership positions and have a strategy to focus on, here is something else that every time I mention this, and I have research to prove it, that if you don't start doing something that you haven't done in a long time, other than the best example I can tell you is New York City. They did the same thing that I'm getting ready to talk to you about now. And the next thing you're going to have to do in the future, ladies and gentlemen, is to strategically engage in what we call cross-party voting. Cross-party voting, starting on the precinct level, where black represents at least 30% of the population. Anywhere you are 30% of the population, you have enough people with that 30% to make a strong effort and determine the destiny of the political activity, the economic activity, and the religious and representation activity in your area with 30% of the population. And you call that cross-party voting. I'm going to make it simple. If you have 30% of black folks in an area where the Republicans are, or the Democrats, or the Libertarians, or the Independents, you get that group to cross-vote in those areas, And then you do the next thing that we know. You start then building coalitions with what we call young voters, Hispanic voters, and other so-called non-black minorities. And all you need to do with your 30%, all you're going to need is 51% plus 3 to win the office and keep it. Now, if you just win with 51%, I guarantee you, they're going to have a recount and they're going to take that vote from you, folks, I tell you. But if you get about 53%, I always like to say 51% plus 3%, you can win without somebody taking. Because when you count those votes the second, third, and fourth time, you're not going to ever come up with the same number. That number is going to be different because they're going to find some votes somewhere. Talk to those folks in certain counties in Mississippi, in Alabama, in Georgia, in New York City. Well, they're going to find some votes because they're going to do their best to stay in power. So, folks, I want you to understand that in order to be saved, you have to save yourself. And some of you are not accustomed to that. You think just because you're in office, you're supposed to stay there for 30, 40, and 50 years. There's nothing wrong with being a preacher, an elected or an appointed official, being in that position for 30, 40, or 50 years, but not in the same position. If you're a preacher and you're in office 10, 15 years or so, you ought to have a young person already training with you to take over, and then you just step down and be the advisor to your church and let them pay you half of your salary. That's what you have to think about, ladies and gentlemen. If you're an old school teacher and you've done about 30 years, that's enough for you. Just go on and resign, get that big check, and then do some volunteer work or work part-time as a teacher in another county or another state, or even at your current school, the one you just retired from. And give those young people a chance to come in there with those new skills. And most of you that finished school in the 80s and before this teaching, you don't know nothing about technology. You know you don't. Those young people in the third grade know more about technology and artificial intelligence than you. So you need to just go on and retire. Superintendents, professors, they've been working 40 and 50 years. Work part-time. Write some books. Get into another profession. I have a list of what I call side hustles, which I'm not going to get into, where you can make $50,000 and $60,000 a year with all that experience and work 4 or 5 hours a week. I'm telling you right now, that's another podcast. But I want you to understand that life can change. It can be so pleasant until you feel that you don't even ever want to leave this world. You want to live to be 105, 110 because things are going so well. And I want you to keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, that to achieve black political power in Mississippi, the South, and the nation by 2030, you got to do those 7 things that I mentioned. Now I'm going to go on and summarize this, and then we're going to get into some key actions so you can know that there are specific things to do by 2030. But to keep things going the right way for the next 150 years, there are other key actions that you must take. So as I summarize, I was talking to a person the other day, and they say you need to always summarize so they can understand what you're saying. So here it is. If you want to get strong politically, economically, and socially in America, you have to recruit new young black leaders. You have to build political clubs in schools and community service organizations. You have to get more black females in positions of responsibility. You have to build cross-racial coalitions with young white voters, Hispanics, and other non-black communities, or what we call in the black community, because there are a lot of other minorities there. They are called non-black minorities. They don't have representation either. Unless they are smart, like that guy in New York City that's going to be the mayor. He did just what I said earlier. He decided to go and do some cross-party voting, and he decided to build coalitions with all the other minorities in New York City. He came from nowhere, and he's only 34 years old, and if they don't assassinate him, he's going to be the mayor of New York. And everybody knows the man is smart, he's young, he has resources, he has a strong coalition, and this guy has taken a lot of hits. But since he's in power now, he did something and didn't resign, didn't take any bribes. He was offered some, according to what we have read. Now, this is just alleged. And now he has done so well, he has so many different plans, some are acceptable and some are not, until the President of the United States is supposed to meet with him. And it appears that they're going to work out something. You know, your president, Donald Trump, says he'd like to work out a deal with you. He'll work out a deal with the new mayor of New York because that's his major homeland. New York. That's where the money is. That's where the big colleges and universities are. That's where all the major churches and the major political clubs, the major businesses. New York City, they're not going to run that boy out of town. They're going to work with him. And that's what you have to do, folks. You got to learn how to build these coalitions with young voters, with other non-black minorities, and with those Hispanics. Man, they got so many Hispanics in America, and I told you this last week, until in a few years, they're not going to need anybody to be the sheriff, the governor, the senator, be the chairman of the board of supervisors. When they vote for themselves, they're going to have 51%. I know you don't like to hear, but why they get to that point, you need to start working with these Hispanics and other so-called non-black minorities and build coalitions and get in these positions of responsibility and stay in there 4 or 5 years or 10 years and then move to another political position. If you're in the House of Representatives, move up to the Senate. If you are in the Senate, do 3 or 4 terms, and then you jump into a state leadership position as lieutenant governor or be governor of the state or run for a federal position in the House or the Senate. But just don't stay in the same position forever, folks. You got to understand that. So the bad thing about it, if you don't learn and listen, I told you in the introduction that you are going to stay got. That means you ain't going to get nothing but what you got. And you ought to be tired of what you got right now. I didn't say what you have. I said what you got. You know what I'm talking about, folks. Don't be happy with it. You got to come up with something new. And now, since you already heard it, I've told you that you don't have to think about it. Just do it. Starting soon, like tomorrow. If you're a member in any organization, community organization, school, church, or a political organization, or even a business association, you need to start organizing, recruiting those people, selecting them, training them, and then place them in positions of responsibility. Folks, it's so simple until it's a disgrace. Now, I want you to think about that. But before we leave, we have a few minutes left. I'm going to talk about some key actions that you must seek before you start running for office. A lot of you all, ladies and gentlemen, and this is bad news for some, you're just going to feel bad when I tell you, a lot of you wake up too late and wait till you lose that job. Wait until you get tired of the one you have before you lose it and start thinking you're going to run for office. And you do it, and you lose. But if you're smart, there are some key actions you need to take. Even before you announce you're running for political office, and when you run, folks, you want to be a winner. The first time. You don't want to be coming in as number 2 or number 3 or number 4. Matter of fact, if you're not 1 or 2, you're out of it until the next 2 years, 4 years, or 6 years, or whatever. So if you have enough will and skill and time and memory to remember what I'm getting ready to tell you now, you can run for political office and win the first time with 51 or 53%, if you do what I'm getting ready to tell you now. Before you seek office and before you announce you're going to run, and it takes about a year to do this, you have to start planning your personnel, You have to get you some money so you can pay certain people. You need as many volunteers as you can find, but there are two people you need to pay in order to work with you when you run for office for the first time, and that is your campaign manager and your voter registration person. Don't look for those to be volunteers. You pay them off when you win by giving them a good job. You pay them a salary and let them and you get together, of course. You all get together and work out a plan and say, I'm going to pay you $15,000 or $20,000 to work part-time and be my campaign manager. I'm going to pay you about $10,000 to be my voter registration manager. And these are the goals I expect for you to reach in both areas. And folks, you do this quietly for about a year, and then you announce you run for office. And before you do that, folks, and this is what I advise people. We've had a few to do it, and they won too, without a runoff. That's what that boy did up there in New York City. You have to quietly plan and work quietly. Keep your mouth shut. Go and join all the organizations you can. You don't want a leadership position in them because that requires a lot of work. You just want to be a member of 10 or 15 different community organizations and get to know those leaders. And once you get in a position where you want to run and announce it, you got your campaign manager together already. You have your voter registration person. They are being paid, and you will get in office. You're already hooked up with the community organization, and then you get in there and tell them, well, I've been with you for about 6 months or a year, and I want a position of leadership in your organization. You're already in 10 different organizations. Get your little position in all 10 of them and start campaigning. And once you do that, folks, you'll find that you're in a position where your competitor, even if he is an incumbent, will be scared to death. You announce that you have a campaign fund already together, that you have a plan that you've been working for a year with new voters. I'm not talking about those old voters. You want to get new voters because the old voters are going to vote for the same candidate that they have put together for the last 10 or 15 years. The same preacher going to stay in that church. The same politicians that's elected going to be there. And he's going to keep his same staff and his same department heads, other than those that get sick and die or get caught and go to jail. Now, these are just facts, and I don't want you all to criticize the poor Barry of good facts and say, oh, he's just talking out of his head. Of course not. These are facts, and you know it. So you got to do that. Start early. And then while you're doing this, ladies and gentlemen, in order to win the first time, you got to seek support from black-owned businesses. Some of you say, well, I don't know whether that's a good idea. It sure is. You'll be surprised how much money black-owned businesses have. I done told you for years and years, everybody black is not broke. Everybody black is not at a point where they got to go and borrow some money to conduct their business or their affairs. Some of them have thousands and thousands and millions of dollars, and they have it right now in the bank. I didn't say in stocks and bonds and other investments, in the bank. They don't know what to do with all that money. So you need to figure out a way where you can get some of it and support them, especially those that have businesses. And later on, we'll talk about that, but we're just giving you a summary now. That's the way you need to act before you decide you're going to run for office. Next thing you want to do is organize local voting campaigns. And you haven't even declared that you're running for anything. They don't even know that. You just get out there and organize it through that paid voter registration person that you have. And all you're going to do is just be there. You're not going to announce anything. You're not going to run anything. The next thing you want to do, you want to have some of your representatives very active in the state and the national party associations, like the Republican, the Democratic Party, the Independent Party, the Libertarian Party. You get some of those people in there and you have them to get in positions where they can influence policy. See, before you announce that you're going to run for office or even run for this new job as the minister of this big church or the superintendent of education or this new executive president of one of these big companies, you have to build your relationships with people of influence before you start announcing you're going to run for something, folks. Keep that in mind. And the next thing you're going to do, if you want to run and win the first time, you have to decide that I'm going to increase my representation through electing other people to office. You want to endorse others privately, not announce it in the paper or social media. When someone is running for sheriff, mayor, county supervisor, or any other political organization, you support him or her. Give them 50, 60, $200 or $300, whatever. Even if they're running for the same position, give them all a little money. 50, 60, $200 or $300. Keep it in mind. Now, in the future, it's going to work for you. So if you go and increase your potential by representing others through their election and giving them a contribution, and you make sure you don't go to them asking for anything other than, I like what you're doing, I want to support you. Even though you tell them, I'm going to be supporting others too in this same race, but you are the most important one in my opinion. Tell them all that. You know you're lying and they know you're lying too, but tell them all that. And then once one of your men or women win, then you give them that second contribution. And you haven't even announced that you're going to run for office. You haven't even announced that you want to be the key preacher of this new church or this old church, whether the old preacher is retired or died. You want to be the president of the new community organization, where the organization president is working 4 hours a month and getting $30,000. Wouldn't you want to do that? Of course you would. So you got to learn to organize and stop criticizing people. And you'll find that your life will start changing to the point that when you start running for office as a new person at 18, 21, 25, 30 years of age, you'll win the first time without a runoff. And you're not even known at all until you announce that you're running for office. And then you pop out of there with all the coats of different colors and different coalitions and money coming into your campaign. I know I shouldn't be giving you this information, but I'm going to do it anyway. We're going to be ending this thing real soon. And I want to conclude by saying, folks, if you want to do these things, all you have to do is remember that I said that if you want to look at politics, you have to think about the past, the present, and the future. Do something different. And then you have to start engaging in a political process that's going to work for you. Keep your mouth shut and work. But I always say, pray first and then work. Don't just pray and sit around and ask the Lord to help you. That's not going to happen. That's a good way to go to hell early before you're 60 years of age. Always begging the Lord to do something for you, and you don't want to do anything for yourself. So now you know if you don't help yourself, you're not going to help him carry out his goals and objectives. And he's not asking you to do very much. Read the Bible. I always tell you, follow the 10 Commandments, do about 7 of them, and you'll be fine. And the reason I say about 7, we have studies to show that the average Christian doesn't know anything about the 10 Commandments. They can't quote them all, but they've heard about a few of them, and they can remember about 7, and they can do about 3 of them on a regular basis. I think we have about a minute left or less, and I want to conclude by saying, ladies and gentlemen, keep in mind, call us when you need us at 601-201-1957. You can email us at clu369@gmail.com. I'm going to give you that number again. It's easy to remember. 601-201-1957. And of course, you can go to pcapmedia.tv. We also found on Facebook and YouTube all over the world. The Eld Henderson Real News Show. Organize. Don't criticize. Thank you for listening.